Hello, this is Tom from Tabletop Tap Room, and it's Miniatures Monday. Today we're looking at fairy rings and mushroom counters, and these are specifically for woodland encounters where there's an area of fairy influence. So let's take a look at the little preview video that I have. So right here you see the big fairy ring that I did on an 8-inch wood disc and a smaller counter with just a few mushrooms on it. These mushrooms, I found them at Michael's, and they are just perfect for doing some mushroom terrain. And you see here some beefy figures. Those are some leprechauns wargaming figures. Now the fairy ring here, the idea that I had is that you'd have a big fairy ring and it might have any fey creatures have advantage within a certain range of the fairy ring or within the fairy ring. And I just thought there could be some nice magical effects to, kind of upend, make the players, get them on their back heel, as it were. They have disadvantage when fighting within the fairy ring, that sort of thing. I did place these mushrooms about a little more than 1 inch apart, so 1-inch bases should fit in there. A couple of them aren't quite that 1 inch, so the bases didn't fit, but oh well. One mistake I did make, and let me go to the other video. Okay, so my original thought is that I'd have the smaller counter. I could put it in the center of the fairy ring and then remove that to reveal the fey creatures that were there, or that some other magical effect. A portal is open to the fey world, to the fairyland, to some other realm. And so different possibilities. I used this product, Army Painter Jungle Tufts. These are little tufts of grass. You peel them off the piece of paper, a little piece of like wax paper, and then glue them down with a little drop of super glue. I've seen instructions saying white glue. I like to use super glue. And I put some in the very center. You can see me here pointing that out in the video. In the very, very center, you can see it there, that I put them in, and so that made that counter stand up. Now, all the other flocking texture that I put in there to give it cool grassland texture, it wouldn't have done that, but these tufts do stick up. And so the tutorial here, we're going to do like about a 3¼ inch base fairy ring. And you see the little wood piles here. You get these at Michael's, Home Depot, Amazon. I'll have some affiliate links below to help you out if you need to locate any of these items that I'm using in spotlighting. So I've already broke out the protractor, pre-measured the degrees. I wanted 5 of these mushrooms, but I wanted them in from the edge a little bit. I kind of learned from doing the big one where I had all the mushrooms on the edge. You kind of had my molding of the ground falling off a little bit, and then the mushrooms, you could see if you really look close. So I didn't want that happening here. So these are going to do them a little bit further in from the edge. I'm creating a pin here with a paper clip. This is my preferred method. I like to pin everything. Now I'm gluing these pins down. I'm putting a lot of super glue in that little center area so that it soaks into the wood and it soaks in and around the thing. And now I'm going to pull out my little, this is my little tin of baking soda, and I'm going to sprinkle baking soda on the super glue because baking soda is a catalyst, causes it to set right up much faster than sitting there and counting. 15 seconds. All right, we have a soft set, and in about a minute we'll have a firmer set. So here we go. Now, through trial and error, now I've actually learned that you need to take a damp paper towel and wipe off any excess of the baking soda. Because the next step, now here I think I'm going to start drilling the mushrooms, make sure they fit on those pins. So yeah, drill and pin. It's my pin vise drill. I actually have 2 pin vise drills, set up. One with a drill bit that fits a big paper clip, and the other with a drill bit that makes a hole that fits the small paper clips. So if I need, I'm usually doing the big paper clips, but if it's a small figure and I'm like, ooh, we better get that smaller, it's already set up, dedicated drill. That's just how I like to do it. So we'll speed this up a little bit. Okay, so here, this is my resin, and my Magic Sculpt, 2.5 pounds of resin, 2.5 pounds of hardener. Accidentally bought an obnoxious amount years ago. Still working my way through it. By the way, when you're mixing, and the reason why I go with Magic Sculpt is because green stuff's so stinking expensive. Now you can just, I saw some prices recently, and it's not what I paid close to 8 years ago. It's just not what I paid for it. So prices have gone up. I still highly recommend, get like a smaller amount than I got. It'll be much more cost effective. But green stuff is so expensive. If you wanted, I effectively have 2.5 pounds of resin, 2.5 pounds of hardener. I have 5 pounds. To get 5 pounds of green stuff, how much money would you spend? It's an insane amount of money. So Magic Sculpt's a much better buy. And as I said before, you wanted to damp cloth and wipe off the excess baking soda. It inhibits the resin from sticking to the wood. Normally it just does. Normally you're wetting your fingers to keep the resin from sticking to them. But with the presence of baking powder, it inhibits that a little bit. So you really got to work at it and push at it. So you just spread around by finger. I ran out. I had to get some more. I overmixed, and the benefit of overmixing and having more of the resin than you actually need on hand is you can leave a piece on the side, and you know that what you've been sculpting, your bases are done hardening when you take that thing and you can't drive your fingernail into it, that little blob you set on the side. So that's also a little thing I like to do. Now, next up here, we're going to be smoothing this out. You can use Teflon sculpting tools. You can use wood ones. And I do have a favorite wood one that I use for everything. But you got to wet them. That resin wants to stick to wood implements, does not stick to Teflon. But you got to wet it. And in fact, you can get your finger really wet and then really smooth out the Magic Sculpt, which is what I'm doing here right now. So the goal here is to kind of wipe out any fingerprints. And that's part of the problem with green stuff. Green stuff's got some shape memory. So you'll have a fingerprint in it, you'll smooth it out, and then you'll be doing stuff, and then you look, and the fingerprint came back in the green stuff. And you're like, that looks terrible. So basically, I'm just looking to smooth it out, and it does not need to be perfection, because next up, you're going to take a toothbrush or a brush like this. I think this is for cleaning shoes. And this side will produce an obvious pattern. This side will not. Maybe because it's beveled and comes to a point. And you'll just start pushing the bristles into all around and give it a nice texture. And you can do it lightly and get a very light texture, and then you can go back and start doing it heavier and push it in to get more texture. This base is only going to look good. Lots of different textures. The wild and the outdoors is not like your lawn. You've mowed the lawn, you got beautiful grass, it just looks wonderful. That is not the outdoors. So you want lots of different textures, and that's what we're going to be going for, as you saw with the bigger disc with this. And let's just speed it up and get past the smoothing out of all the little lines and my fingerprints in there. Okay, so now I'm dry fitting the mushrooms on here. And I'm going to take a micron marker with a very small point and just put a little mark on the pin there, the paper clip pin. And that lets me see how much of that pin sticks into the mushroom. And then I can, by eye, usually just cut them and trim off the pin. Be careful at this point because when you cut the pins, they go ricocheting. I tend to point it at the mat or point it into the trash can. Let let the wire that's getting cut off go flying in the trash can. So I've trimmed these up, and then we're just going to dab of super glue so that enough super glue, so it's not just on the pin, but it gets on the bottom of the mushroom and holds it down to the thing. And then we will go and prime this. Okay, what's going on here is that I dry fit these and needed to trim one. So I did that. Now we're going to do the super glue. I like Zapaglap, and I use Zapagap Green Label, because Green Label is less runny and doesn't run everywhere on your miniatures, particularly plastic miniatures. It can make a mess on plastic miniatures. So I use the Green Label. It is thicker, it's gap filling, and I just prefer the Green Label over the runnier one. And I can't even remember it's been so long since I bought the other version of Zapagap that I don't even remember the color of that label where it's actually runnier. I just have no use for the runnier Zapagap. Okay, so it's been down to the paint station to prime it with some spray paint, and I didn't get great coverage from the spray paint on these little mushrooms, so I touched them up with um, a brush on primer from this is from Vallejo, excuse me, from Vallejo. I knew that. Vallejo gray, and I've got a Vallejo beige brush on primer. I love them. They really work good on metal miniatures. Sometimes they will adhere to metal miniatures better than a spray primer. So I just touched them up with that and then went from there. And that's why they look a little lighter here. We are painting the base in a mahogany sand. And then after that dries, we'll dry brush on a pale sand. And that's my basic painting method for just ground. And afterwards, we'll pull the whole thing together with Reichland Flesh Shade from Citadel, from Games Workshop. And it just looks great. It just looks good consistently. I don't have to think about it. I just do this all the time. This is my little recipe for dirt ground, and it just ends up always looking good. So that's what's going on here. Let's speed up the video and get past the ground. Okay, I used to just save whatever paintbrush I had blown out, had too much paint dried down in near the head of it, that I hadn't effectively cleaned. I just saved my old paintbrushes for dry brushing, but I'm liking, if I can, nice flat edged paintbrush for dry brushing. I've just found that this works. So I've started keeping these on hand and just throwing away the blown out brushes when they're used up. And also the best way to keep your brushes good and conditioned is make sure you're cleaning them with pink soap. Pink soap's a great product made specifically for this. You find it in your hobby shops. There'll be a link below if you haven't, you can get it through Amazon. Now, these little mushrooms, these little stinkers, have these indentations. I would have thought that you'd want them to be outdentations, convex instead of concave. So I wanted to paint them and the stem a light color, but knowing that I used pale sand, we just went and grabbed the beige from Vallejo Model Color. I could have used white, but I felt like white was going to be too bright. Sometimes when you use straight black, just pure black, it doesn't look good in the model. And sometimes when you use just pure white, it's too much in the model. But somebody looking at it fast, even though I used beige, I mean, compared to the brown, this looks white. When you put it next to something dark, let's use the cap of the primer here. So, if this was the color, having the beige next to it, it looks white. So sometimes you just don't want to use straight white and straight black. And so I just used the beige to do the mushrooms, to do little concave indentations in all of them, and paint the stems. And then I'm going to come back with just a red. And, I had flat red on hand, and I said, that's a little bit bright. It might have been too bright for a D&D miniature, but I thought this is a fairy setting. This piece is for a fairy setting, and the fairies and the fae are bright colors, and it should be a riot of color sometimes. And so I said, screw it, we're going to go with the flat red. It'll be bright, and it'll help stand out, and that'll be fine. Plus, with all of the texturing we're going to do to the base, I actually improved upon the texturing that you see in the preview video of the 8-inch and the little 1.25 inch marker base that I did. This one actually is going to end up being better when we get to the Woodland Scenics, static grass, coarse turf, fine turf, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, the Army Painter tufts of grass in there, and Games Workshop modeling gravel. This was one of the first things I bought when I started doing miniatures. I still have some. So all these different textures are going to go on there. And I actually improved upon what I did with the big 8-inch base with the 3.25 inch base. So we'll get to that. Let's go ahead and speed this up and get through the painting. Okay, right here, this is where we're going to hit the base with the Reichland Flesh Shade. And these shades are really, really fantastic. They can really mug a miniature sometimes, but you then just go back and dry brush some highlights in, and because what this is doing is putting color in deeper crevices. It will color, lighter paints, but as a technical paint, it's a shade. It does that running in. It kind of, you don't have to be setting up your washes all the time. You have a bunch of these. I was looking for my Noon oil the other day. I couldn't find it, but the Athonian camel shades, sepia, the shade, sepia, something shade. So they have different ones. You want a black one, you want a blue one, you want a green one, you want a brown one. I highly recommend them. This used to be called, I do believe, Ogren Flesh, and it was just perfect. the ogre flesh. I was so sad when I ran out of it, and then I couldn't find it anymore. And then somebody says, "Oh no, they just changed it to Reichshade." It was perfect for you paint the face, and you just paint it without much, and then maybe some highlights, and then you hit the face with the ogre flesh. It would just look great. So I found that this Reichshade pulls the whole base together. Let's speed it up again, get past the painting of the mushroom tops. Now, I don't know if you noticed it there. I'm using a Citadel paint handle. I love these. Highly recommend them. And these are really great because the top screws off. And that is the same screw fitting that you get in camera tripods. So you can, the mount for the camera, you can take it off. And I love these. And you could mount this and hold the miniature, particularly if you're trying to photograph it on a tripod, for photography reasons. So here we are with the texturizing the base. Now, I like white glue for doing this. I imagine I could use super glue, but I have for years done it this way, and I am loath to change. But Games Workshop modeling gravel, it's just ground up cork, as from what I understand. And so I'm just putting some random areas of white glue here for the cork to stick to. And then when I'm going to go back with, I got a 4-to-1 mix of white glue. I put it in a spray bottle because I thought, I'll just be able to go, miss something with it. Only was able to do that once, and the glue has now clogged the works of the spray pump. And so I'm actually dipping the paintbrush in here to brush on. Now, the next step is to I'm going to save all of this gravel here and pour it right back in the dish. Whatever didn't stick glue goes right back in the dish, and hence, you end up using this stuff for years. And so after that kind of sets up a little bit, we will then just brush water down. I go with a 4-to-1 mix, so it's real milky, and that seals that gravel in, because the gravel's stuck to the glue, but you could knock some off with your fingers. So I just brush some on and on top of the gravel, and it dries clear. And I don't even bother painting the gravel. I think the gravel looks good without even painting it. That's why I didn't put it on before I primed. I waited to this stage because it just looks good. And so I just brush these on, and that's the beginning of our texture. We've got the magic sculpt that I've given texture with that brush. We now have gravel. And then next, we're going to get to the coarse turf, I believe. Now, this part goes fast. What I've done is, pull up the Woodland Scenics, is I have fine yellow grass, fine turf, yellow grass color. I have coarse turf, orange fall, and then coarse turf, fall rust. Half a teaspoon of the coarse orange and half a teaspoon of the red orange. A teaspoon, and when I say a teaspoon, I'm not even using measuring spoons. I'm just a plastic spoon here and making a rough measure. And I've mixed it in this little tub, put the lid on it, shook it up, and so that they were all mixed together. And the end result, you're going to see, we do a photo at the end, really close up, is just gorgeous. All those colors interspersed just end up looking good. And so, you put super glue down, you put the coarse turf on it, it soaks up super glue and sticks to it. And you shake off the excess and you're right onto static grass. Now, I know that there is a machine with 2 pins, and you can pass electricity through the base so that when you put the super glue and the static grass, you apply the electricity to it, it causes static grass to stand up. Hence the name static grass, 'cause they're using static electricity to get it to stand up within the electrical field. And then it looks like real grass. And this was developed for model making for the trains. I'm using light green. I've and so literally, I bought this. I bought this almost 2 decades ago. Almost. Still haven't used it up because I'm doing a lot of bases with it. I'm not doing big terrain pieces, so it just lasts. And I know that you can do that whole stand-up effect. I've just found that just putting a little super glue and shaking the static grass onto it, it just looks good. We're still leaving some bare spots on the base because I want to add in those Army Painter Tufts, because that's just another feature to this multiple levels of texture. And so they're just on here. Oh, green screen's kind of nailing them a little bit, but you just literally peel one off, and I hold it with tweezers, put a drop of super glue, and then put it in there. See, I found a nice little bare spot, and we're going to put one tuff in, and I'm going to go for a second tuff, but I'm going to make sure I don't use the same size so we don't get this regular looking size tuff. I'm going to use a smaller tuff and put it in another little spot. And then ultimately we've got all these different levels of texture on this base, and it's going to look good. In fact, it looks better than the 8-inch base, I think, the end result. And we'll see that in a second. Okay. You see here in this picture, these are from birch catkins. Basically, birch tree reproduces by seed, and they have these little, it looks like the tail of a cat. These little, like cat tail things that grow with the leaves. And so, I live in the Northeast. Rumor has it that buying these is wicked expensive. I could just go out and find a tree with a catkin, and there's other trees that have catkins. And when you kind of rub the catkin between your fingers and make it come apart, it comes apart into this little leaf structure and the seed. You get rid of the seeds, you save the leaf structure. They look like a real leaf in scale. They've been used by model builders and diorama makers for decades. So here's the final result. You can see on the 3-inch base where all the coarse turf, the fine turf, and the 2 different colors of coarse turf were mixed, and they glued. It really has a much more aesthetically pleasing effect than the way I did the coarse and fine turf on the other bases. So this really looks good, and you can see all the different textures in here, between the coarse turf, the static grass, the tufts, the gravel that's on there. It's just, there's all that texture adds up to be aesthetically pleasing, and it just looks good. And you have to remember that in wargaming terrain, and this also to a certain degree applies to D&D terrain, you're observing something like this from 3 feet away. It just has to look good from 3 feet away. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm liking the results, and it's a little shiny there because it hasn't been down to the paint station to get some matte finish. So this is Tom from our Tabletop Tap Room. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks to my subscribers. You guys are great. Don't forget that like, subscribe, and bell icon to help me build the channel. I hope you enjoyed the fairy ring. I just thought that I need a fairy ring, because it can function as a trap as they're traveling in the wilderness. It could be a portal to adventure. You enter the Feywild, you enter some fairy realm. And, I particularly like the 8-inch base but my smaller fairy ring, if I don't need that big of a base, will work as well. So there you have it. Fairy rings, mushroom counters in the wilderness. Leave a comment below if you have a suggestion for a build you would like to see me do. Would be more than happy to tackle those down the road in the future. This is Tom signing out, and again, keep on gaming.